So, Pride and Prejudice is one of the most romantic books ever written in history. Or is it? Are Elizabeth and Darcy actually in love by the end of the book? And how do you even define that love? Were they living up to the romantic ideals of the time? And really, in the 1800s, did they even have romantic ideals? Back then, wasn't it all like marry for money and it doesn't matter if you like the person? Well, in today's video, we're going to be going into that topic, romantic love in Jane Austen's books, and also romantic love in the 1800s with something called Companionate Marriage. So let's dive into that. So first up, let's talk about the 1800s and romance. I feel like there's often this misconception that in the 17 and the 1800s that people just didn't care about romance when it came to marriage. It was all about money and alliances. And while money and alliances were definitely important, like I've talked about in past videos, love and marrying for love was so important. In fact, over the course of the 17 and 1800s, we see marrying for love becoming important, and then more important, and then super important, and then this is life, guys. I need to find the perfect one, and if I get married and it doesn't live up to my really high expectations, I'm gonna be miserable. And that's why by the end of the Victorian era, some people were even having this sort of like backlash against romance because it was not living up to how elevated and idolized it had really become. So basically, did they care about marrying for love in the 1800s? Yes. So much yes, guys. And part of that marrying for love preoccupation tied in with the concept that marriage should be companionate. So companionate marriage is basically the concept that when a couple gets married, they should be companions to each other, right? I know that is like totally crazy, out there, unforeseeable. But basically it was the concept that a man and a wife should have a true partnership. They should love each other. They should be attracted to each other. They should be true best friends who just love gathering around the fireplace, talking about life and different topics. Now, this concept of companionate marriage historically is in contrast to a more hierarchical or patriarchal type of marriage, where basically the husband and the wife are not on best friend terms, because in order to be best friends, you have to have some level of equality. Meanwhile, under a more traditional patriarchal marriage, the husband and the wife are sort of separated by the hierarchy and they have less closeness. They're not having those late night talks about the meaning of life. So a lot of historians have actually searched for that important turning point where marriages went from being more hierarchical to being more companionate. It's like this is the magical year where suddenly everybody wanted to be best friends with their spouse, but they've never been able to find one. And part of the reason is because marriages are so mixed. There were still some patriarchal marriages happening in the Regency era, and there were more companionate marriages happening historically. But definitely the overall trend in how marriage was viewed and the ideal of marriage by Jane Austen's time had become this one of companionate marriage. And of course, this was helped on by such things as the English Enlightenment, where they started getting new ideas about politics and the nature of human rights. And also the English Religious Reformation, where we see them going from being Catholic to being a Protestant religion, and then them going from being a more cohesive Protestant religion to having a lot of dissenters or people who had a smaller breakaway Protestantism from the main church. And all of these things contributed to shifting ideas about marriage and what it should be in life, and also shifting ideas about women and their role in the family, which then all resulted in the idea that husbands should be BFFs with their wife. Editing Ellie here, also just wanting to pop in with a note about novels and their role in this rise of romantic love and really the idolization of love. So a lot of people have blamed this movement on the fact that romance novels started coming out in the mid to late 1700s, and that filled people's heads with these ideas that love should be all romantic and amazing. It's definitely one of those things where we see art influencing life, but also life influencing art. These romantic books didn't come out of nowhere. This preoccupation with love was something already within society. That's what resulted in these authors writing these books. But then, of course, these books were now read by especially young women, and that continued to mold their ideas even more so this way. And it became a cycle, right? It's like they already love love. Here's some love books. This makes them love love more. But these romantic novels certainly didn't create this within society. They simply enforced it and made it grow, but it was already there to begin with. But that, of course, did not stop people at the time from blaming young people's sometimes unrealistic view of romance on the novels, because there was definitely a demonization of novels and them ruining young ladies' minds at the time. Now, does Elizabeth and Darcy's relationship actually live up to the romantic ideal of companionate marriage? Well, we're about to dive into that question, but first, let's have a quick word about this video's sponsor, Skillshare. A few years ago, I had a dream of learning to be able to paint on my iPad, but trying to follow random tutorials online or watching YouTube quick tip videos was just leaving me feeling frustrated. I wish someone could just teach me what I needed to do in a simple step-by-step method so that I could actually learn. Then I saw another YouTuber talking about Skillshare, and I thought this was the learning platform for me, and I was right. Skillshare is where experts actually teach you their skills, not just random tips. While I still love taking art classes on Skillshare, I also love the variety of topics that they offer. They let me explore new interests as I change and grow. For example, recently I watched the class YouTube Success by Marquez Brownlee so that I can become a better YouTuber for you all. And when I developed a sudden, irresistible, and totally unforeseen desire to crochet a scarf, well, I simply followed along with Connie Lee Lynch in Crocheting Basics. So if you want to discover new interests and have fun learning new skills, well then definitely check out Skillshare. So the first 1,000 people to use the link in the description below will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So definitely check that out today. Now, back to Darcy and Elizabeth's relationship. And so to get us started with understanding exactly what it took to have a companionate marriage, let's look at this quote from Pride and Prejudice when Elizabeth is having that transformation from feeling not so great about Darcy to really liking Darcy. It says, "If gratitude and esteem are good foundations of affection, Elizabeth's change of sentiment will be neither improbable nor faulty." So here we have this equation of gratitude plus esteem is the foundation for affection. So I've already gone so deep into this concept of gratitude in Jane Austen's works in my video on how to attract Henry Tilney that I'm not going to rehash that here. But basically the Regency concept of gratitude was that reciprocal liking that psychologists say is now the basis of relationships today, where first one person's like, "Hey, I like you." Another person's like, "Oh, wow, I like you too, because you like me, and that's kind of awesome. You have great taste." Anyway, that's gratitude. If you want to learn more, go watch that video. But then we have this other concept of esteem. What does it mean when you esteem someone? Well, according to Dr. Johnson's dictionary, that was like the definitive dictionary of English back in the day, it means that you highly value someone, that you rate their qualities highly. Basically, it's another term for respect for who they are as a person. And really, this was the Regency idea that your love should be based on a person's good qualities. A self-help guide for young women at the time says this about looking for a marriage mate. It says, "Whatever romantic notions you may hear or read, depend upon it. Those matches are the happiest which are made on rational grounds, on suitableness of character and fortune, on mutual esteem, and the prospect of a real and permanent friendship." So here we see, even though romance is the ideal, they're saying that romance should be based on suitable character, also fortune, because like I've talked about in my other video, money was important back then too. But really the suitableness of character and real esteem. And we really do see Elizabeth build a lot of esteem for Darcy throughout the story. From the second that she gets that letter from him at Rosings and she starts reevaluating his character, she realizes that he's always seemed like a dutiful brother, that he tries to be a good friend to a decent guy like Bingley, that he's respected by others, that she's never seen anything negative about his character, but actually a lot of good qualities. Then of course this continues when she goes to Pemberley. She sees the way he treats her aunt and uncle, who are from a different social class, and she heard a great character reference from a servant. Servants at the time could often be called as witnesses in court for everything from domestic abuse to someone having an affair, being like, yeah, I served that fair couple breakfast in bed. I can attest to the fact they were having an affair. So servants saw a lot, they knew a lot, and their testimony was valuable. So really, Elizabeth, over time, discovers that she has a lot to esteem. And I feel like this is a main theme almost of Pride and Prejudice. Elizabeth learning that her prejudices were blinding her from the esteem Darcy deserved and the lack of esteem that Wickham deserved. In fact, let's go back to that passage we were reading earlier. It says this: if gratitude and esteem are good foundations of affection, Elizabeth's change of sentiment will be neither improbable nor faulty. But if otherwise, if regard springing from such sources is unreasonable or unnatural, in comparison of what is so often described as arising on a first interview with its object, and even before two words have been exchanged, nothing can be said in her defense, except that she had given somewhat of a trial to that latter method in her partiality for Wickham, and that its ill success might perhaps authorize her to seek the other, less interesting mode of attachment. So here we see Jane Austen describing love at first sight, and she acts like this is a common concept. And that's exactly what that self-help conduct book we just read also pointed out. Whatever romantic notions you may hear or read, depend upon it, those matches are the happiest which are made on rational grounds, on suitableness of character. But on the other hand, a union formed upon mere personal liking, without the requisite foundation of esteem, can be productive of nothing but misery and shame, right? If you do not marry someone who's esteemable, who has those good qualities you can respect, then your marriage is going to turn out badly because, they're unestimable. But does that mean you can just marry anyone you respect? You're like, hey, you have some great qualities. I guess we should just get married. That's all we need. No, it was not, because you also needed to be compatible. During the time, they were very preoccupied with the concept of disposition or temper. This is what, in modern terms, we would call someone's personality. Basically, are your personalities compatible or not? Are they going to be a good match? And that compatibility or lack of it was seen as an important factor that may make a marriage awesome or not awesome. Let's look at what Elizabeth has to say about her and Mr. Darcy's compatibility. After she runs into him at Pemberley and he's awesome, here's what she has to say. She began now to comprehend that he was exactly the man who, in disposition and talents, would most suit her. Not only does Darcy have this rock-solid character and that she can esteem, his character is also one that's perfectly suited to her own. She thinks about their possible marriage. It was a union that must have been to the advantage of both. By her ease and liveliness, his mind might have been softened, his manners improved, and from his judgment, information, and knowledge of the world, she must have received a benefit of greater importance. So here we see Elizabeth analyzing exactly which qualities of her own would best complement his and how his qualities could help her. And we see Mr. Bennet even weighing in on this issue of compatibility when he starts warning Lizzy about accepting Darcy. He says, "I know your disposition, Lizzy. I know that you could be neither happy nor respectable unless you truly esteemed your husband. Unless you looked up to him as a superior. Your lively talents would place you in the greatest danger in an unequal marriage." So here we see Mr. Bennet saying, "I understand how your personality works, Lizzy. You need to be able to respect your husband. And you would be miserable in an unequal marriage." So what was an unequal marriage? Well, it was a marriage where the couple's personalities did not mesh very well. And in fact, the most famous Pride and Prejudice unequal marriage would be that of Mr. Bennet and Mrs. Bennet. Their personalities are so polar opposite that they are completely incompatible, and yet they're married, now they're stuck married to each other. And in fact, we see Elizabeth learning from the fact that her parents have an unhappy, unequal marriage. Pride and Prejudice says, "Had Elizabeth's opinion been all drawn from her own family, she could not have formed a very pleasing opinion of conjugal felicity or domestic comfort." Later it says, "But she had never felt so strongly as now the disadvantages which must attend the children of so unsuitable a marriage." So Elizabeth knows her parents are not well matched, their marriage is unsuitable, that it's ruined their happiness, and now it's ruining their children's chances in life. So really we see that compatibility of personalities was so important in choosing a mate. And one of the reasons for that is because it would aid you in the other important aspect of being best friends with your mate. So let's talk about Jane Austen and friendship. I feel like Elizabeth and Darcy have one of the shortest and least developed friendships of Jane Austen's main couples. We see in Emma has known Mr. Knightley forever. They have this very solid friendship their relationship is based on. Even in Northanger Abbey, Catherine goes to stay with Henry and his sister, and they hang out quite a bit. And in Mansfield Park, Fanny has definitely had years of close friendship with her cousin Edmund before they get married. In fact, they've been good friends since she was a child. And here's a quote from Mansfield Park where we hear this friendship between them described. It says, "Edmund's friendship never failed her. He was always true to her interests and considerate of her feelings, trying to make her good qualities understood and to conquer the diffidence which prevented their being more apparent, giving her advice, consolation, and encouragement." So here we see Edmund and Fanny having this really close relationship. He gives her comfort, he gives her encouragement, he's there as her best friend. What's fascinating about this passage is that Edmund was pretty much already fulfilling the best friend role husbands were supposed to fill for their wives, and wives were supposed to fill for their husbands. Another moral advice book that was very popular and put out in the 1740s has this to say about that friendship in marriage. First off, it starts out with this great claim for marriage. "This institution was calculated for a constant scene of delight, as much as our being is capable of." Marriage is a constant scene of delight, guys. "It's also the completest image of heaven we can receive in this life." Scenes of delight, heavenly, marriage. "The greatest pleasures we can enjoy on earth are the freedoms of conversation with a bosom friend, who in occasion of joy will congratulate, and in occurrences of distress or danger will mingle his concern, one who will divide our cares and double our joys." Then it goes on to say that two have chosen each other out of all the species with a design to be each other's mutual comfort. So here again we see comforting, double joys, having sorrows, being that bosom friend that can have great conversations, and that's already what Edmund is for Fanny. So now we know to have a ideal companionate marriage, you need to be able to respect the person you're marrying for their good qualities, and they need to actually have good qualities. And in addition to that, you need to be compatible. Their qualities need to complement yours. And once that happens, you can be best friends. But what about love? I think when it comes to Jane Austen and love, there's always kind of been a debate about how much love is actually the romantic, passionate variety in her books. Part of the confusion comes up from the fact that she uses the word affection quite a lot, as we saw in that quote earlier with Elizabeth, where gratitude and esteem are the foundations of affection. But is affection actually love as we understand it today? Well, how do we understand it today? Pedia.com gives us this comparison of affection versus love. It says, affection can be defined as a gentle feeling of fondness, caring, or liking. It is a moderate feeling or emotion compared to love. Unlike love, affection does not consist of passionate or romantic feelings. So is that what Jane Austen meant? Throughout her books, was she like, you know what? Then they had a moderate liking for each other. Very tame and non-passionate feelings. Nothing really romantic, but some gentle liking. The answer is, well, just like other words that have changed throughout time, our understanding of affection has changed. Affection's had a long and varied history in the English language. From the 13th century onwards, it has had a variety of meanings that includes everything from desire to passion to lust without reason, and of course, love. In fact, Dr. Johnson's dictionary again gives us this Regency era definition of love. It can include passion of any kind, and of course, love, kindness, goodwill to some person. And really, we see Jane Austen in her letters use affection as a synonym for love. For example, when gossiping about a woman getting married for the second time, she says that the match surprises but does not offend me. Had her first marriage been of affection, or had there been a grown-up single daughter, I should not have forgiven her, but I consider everybody as having a right to marry once in their lives for love. So here we see the first marriage was not a marriage of affection, or, as we learn later in that same quote, a marriage of love, but her second one is going to be one of affection and love. We also see Jane Austen's character of Jane Bennet using it the same way. When she is talking to Elizabeth about her engagement to Darcy, she reacts, "And do you really love him quite well enough? Oh, Lizzy, do anything rather than marry without affection." So here, again, within a few sentences, Jane's using love as a synonym for affection. And she's also very clearly stating Jane Austen's own opinion when it comes to love and marriage. When writing a letter of romantic advice to one of her nieces, Jane Austen told her, "Anything is to be preferred or endured rather than marrying without affection." So really we see Jane Austen upholding that romantic ideal that love and affection is required for marriage. And I feel like that's one of the reasons Jane Austen's works have endured over time, is she was able to capture a essence of romance that so many people even now relate to, no matter how much our cultures or language has changed. So, was Elizabeth actually in love with Mr. Darcy? Well, in Jane Austen terms, yes, definitely. She had a good character to esteem him on. They were compatible in their personalities. They had the potential to develop some friendship, even though they spent most of the book being frenemies. And also, they had love and true affection that was going to help them in their marriage. Editing Ellie here because I messed up my outro when I recorded it the first time. So, hi. So let me know in the comments below, if you lived in the Regency era, what would you be looking for in a mate? Would you want some esteemable qualities? Or is love at first sight more your thing? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, thank you again so much to this video sponsor Skillshare. And remember, the first 1,000 people to click the link in the description below will get a 1-month free trial. So definitely check that out if you want to learn some awesome skills. My name is Ellie Dashwood, and this is my channel where we talk about history and literature. If you like either of those things, please subscribe and keep having an awesome day because you are awesome. Bye!
I can't let you go, baby.